Hello and welcome to the MacGuffin, and
The Red Herring.
I'm the MacGuffin,
And I'm the Red Herring.
and we're here to discuss Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. I think the show suffers,
And I love it.
so there's a lot of hater rants out there, and there's a handful of people that enjoy it, and so we're here to discuss both. Hope you like what we have to say, and if not, let us know in the comments. This week's episode of The MacGuffin and the Red Herring brought to you by Ye Old Gym, personal training and online fitness coaching. Find us on Instagram. Starting out with the Harfoot section, I have a lot of notes about world building, fantasy colloquialisms. World building is something that I'm kind of passionate about, so I think needs to be paid attention to.
And in this franchise, I think it's good to be. I think being critical of the world building. That's something Tolkien was really big on.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's how he made the stories in the first place. So when people criticize the world building, I think that's one of the things that the showrunners definitely could have been. They could have incorporated more of that love.
Yeah. So, and I think they tried, but again, the way they tried is just not something that works with me personally. And one of them is a lot of the phrases and words that they use. And in this scene specifically, one of the hunters is telling the other one to hurry up, and he says, "Rattle your dags." And it's one of those, like, it just feels like it's trying too hard to me. Like, I think there's... And this one's not the worst one, but it sets up a trend for a lot of things that are going to come up later. My next note is about the camp. So I like the camp disguising, but like when they've got everything covered up and they're uncovering everything, I'm actually just going to mute this and hit play so that we can watch it as I'm talking about it.
Yep.
Maybe. Right. So they blow this whistle. They're like, "Oh, the hunters are gone," but then they don't cover the wheel of their wagon. They don't cover these lanterns they have outside. They don't cover. There's like a whole crate in one of these next scenes. So it's like, I think it's cool and interesting that they try to hide from everybody. There's a blatantly obvious crafted built crate outside. There's a wheel that's not covered, another wheel that's not covered. So it's like, I like the idea of, oh, these people hide from everyone. Look at how cool they hide from everyone. But then they don't actually hide. Yeah. They still have a lot of stuff out in the open. And then I have a note about the acting. I say everyone's overacting, which usually means bad directing. But what were you going to say?
I was going to say, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
I think, just to go on the defensive a little bit there, is I think if it was actually fully camouflaged, people wouldn't know what the heck they're looking at, too. Because, like, when they come out of the tree stump, cool. Well, we know what a tree is, but, like, we don't know that they have wagons with them. This is their way of introducing, like, oh, these structures that they're coming out of have wheels. Oh, that's a wagon. Oh, they're nomads. Like,
well, then maybe have someone crawl out and uncover a wheel.
Yes.
Like, you can very easily make that adjustment.
Yeah, but when they're looking at economy of screen time, they're just like, it's fine if the wheel's visible. It gets the point across quicker, and I think that's one of those things where I agree with you. Like, if this is important to Tolkien, I wish it was. You could give it more screen time. Honestly, people hate that about Tolkien, spending so much time establishing the world and the objects in it. They hate it. Maybe that was one of the things they were afraid of. It was like, don't spend. Why did we spend a whole minute showing how they uncover their wagons? I could see them being sensitive to that kind of like when they were making the show. But honestly, as a Tolkien lover, I think I would have preferred to see that.
Yeah. And I actually have notes later, speaking of economy of screen time, about things that I'm like, this just took way too long. You could have done that faster. So
take from one and give it to the other.
Yeah. Another fantasy world building colloquialism. Poppy says, "Oh, great glory and splendor," when they find the berry patch. And again, I'm like, this just feels like you're trying a little too hard. Like, I feel like there's a better... And then my last note about the Harfoot scene is Chekhov's wolf takes too long to fire.
Chekhov's wolf.
We see a wolf
Yeah.
in like the opening sequence of
Yeah.
episode 1,
Yeah,
and then we don't even think about wolves again until like episode 5.
that's true.
So it's like that's something that either should have been a problem in episode 1,
Mm-hmm.
or they should have just left it alone until they because they still find wolf prints in episode 5 before the wolf attack.
Yeah,
So that's
I think so, because that becomes the breaking point, right? Like
Mhm.
that becomes
Yeah.
the breaking point where they're like, "You're the troublemaker."
yeah.
So like,
But that's actually the point where they turn about totally not Gandalf.
yeah.
They're like, because he saves them from the wolves, and they're like, oh, maybe he's not so bad.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the whole time they're like, oh, we got this like big stranger that wrecked our camp.
Yeah.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but again, like in this specific scene, I don't think the wolf really serves a purpose. I think it's just there to show that small people are scared of wolves, which big people are scared of wolves. So I don't think you need to establish that.
I think it does establish that there's dangers in the world that like to show the danger of going off trail for these folks is like, you know, it validates that the world is dangerous to the Harfoots, but like
Yeah.
we don't actually. I agree with you actually.
Mhm.
I thought we would see wolves coming to the camp,
Yeah.
and like chasing the little ones, and then see how they handle
How they
them.
handle threats.
But that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Also, one note about the wolves: they're not actually wolves.
Yeah, they're like,
They're well, they look like there's an extinct genus of like pre-whale / hippo called an Andrewsarchus,
cool.
and it kind of looks like that.
Cool.
But I'm like, then call it something else. If you don't want it to look like a wolf, don't call it a wolf, because they have horses in this that they still call horses. So you either have to go. You either have to go all in on this is a fantasy world and nothing in that we understand in the real world holds water here, or this is a fantasy world and there are some creatures that cross over, like horses and wolves. But
I think that's a candidate for the warg, because I think they do have.
well, they have a warg
They have a
later
warg.
that looks entirely different from these.
Yeah,
things.
exactly. So I think
Yeah.
that like they could have just called this one a warg. They
Yeah.
could have just made this one a warg.
Yeah, and then use the same CGI animal in the trenches.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
That would have been cool and in the world.
'Cause-
This is one of those things that I think that they were. I think they were trying to spruce it up and make it a little bit.
And that was the first time I watched this. That was a benefit of the doubt I gave them. I was like, oh, it's actually a warg. They call them wolves. And then later, when they show a warg that they call a warg and looks nothing like the wolves, then I'm like, okay, well, I can't even give you credit where I try to give you credit.
Yep.
All right, that's everything I have on the Harfoots for now. Now I'm back on the elves. Main complaint is the elves feel too human, which is something we kind of talked about. And I say like, and again, this is its own independent thing, so maybe the elves are more human in this, but they feel less wise, less stable, less altruistic in this than what they have in other properties before.
Yeah.
And then I have a note about. Do you have any thoughts on that before I move on?
I think the elves they've not been perfect in any of the Tolkien stuff, but pride is always an issue for them. But I think, are you talking about the Southlands in particular, or are you talking about the elves?
No. Because the first encounter is this is when Elrond's in the tree.
Oh yeah, so important to note about
So it's
Elrond, and it comes up throughout. So we definitely are privy to it based off of what we're shown in the show too. But like Elrond's half human, half elf. So I think it's cool that he's a little snarky. I think that it's cool that he's a little bit.
But it's
He's-
not him that I notice it with. It's the other elves that I notice them seeming too human with. They seem ambitious rather than selfishly ambitious rather than altruistically ambitious.
Interesting. Okay. So we'll watch real quick. I'm curious to see
Yeah.
what specifically you're talking about.
I mean, it'll probably come up later.
I know. For me, Gil Gallen is really cool in this. He comes off as, kind of cold. Where our instincts are immediately like, we're kind of with Galadriel, where he's like, oh, you're just a bad boss, aren't you? You don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have that aside where we get to be like, oh no, Gil Gallen really is quite wise. He's wise to send her.
I've been comparing it to like when you watch The Little Mermaid as a kid versus when you watch it as an adult. And as a kid, it's like, oh, why just like let Ariel live her life and do her thing. and then you watch this as an adult, and you're like, oh no, like she's 16 and she needs to grow and mature and learn before she makes horrible decisions that ruin her life and the lives for every single other person in the world. Okay, so my next note is about Elrond writing poetry. And I say poetry that's supposed to be poetry. Good. And then they introduce Galadriel as the commander of the Northern Armies, warrior of the Wastelands. And I continued on, sister to a murdered brother, wife to a murdered husband, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next. It's like, all right, well, she's Maximus now. He says that he expected her to come back covered in like
Troll's blood,
mud and something, and she says no, just frostbite and troll blood.
Oh, that's
She got frostbite. That's an important detail that I will bring up in episode 6.
Okay.
So right now, those of you at home taking notes.
Okay.
She got frostbite. That's important in episode 6.
Yes. We also do canonize that the elves magically heal, though, that their physical forms are restored.
Yes, that I will also touch on.
Yeah.
And then she calls Elrond a politician, which again just kind of feels like more Gladiator being shoehorned in. That's everything that I have for this scene. Do you have any feedback on that?
Well, I was gonna say, what is the pride? What is the elves being humans? What were some of the example points?
I think part of it in this scene is the hair. Like, I like my elves with long hair. Maybe that's me being racist. I don't know. I think elves should have long hair.
Yep. No, honestly, that's a criticism a lot of people had with Elrond specifically.
And again, if it was like all of the warrior elves have short hair, that would again have a world-building purpose to it, kind of like how modern military they all get the same haircut. But
I think most of the boy elves have the same haircut.
Yeah. Celebrimbor definitely does.
Yeah.
Celebrimbor looks like he could be Elrond's dad.
Aesthetically, yes.
Yeah. I think it was just the hair in this scene, and then later there's other stuff that comes up. But I think that was the kind of the jumping off point of that. Back on the Harfoots. Harfoots 2. I do like Nori's relationship with her parents. It feels authentic, and it feels like they have a legitimate parental-child relationship.
I think I really like the Harfoots on their own, but separating them from the Hobbits is really hard. Like, we know that Hobbits...
The Harfoots are just a type of Hobbit.
Yeah, but we know Hobbits are supposed to be the good guys. They represent a lot of, like, good, wholesome qualities. And when we look at the Harfoots, we see a kind of insular, kind of bad community, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, they're kind of
evil.
They're kind of bad to each other. They're cowardly. Like, they're cowardly because they have to be, and they hide, but they're also kind of cowardly in any kind of, like, standing up for each other sort of way.
Which is a note I will talk about a lot.
Yeah, but I think that's... I see a lot of people criticize the Harfoots for being, like, inhuman and stuff, but I know that, like, even the first time I watched this, my reaction to Harfoots was a lot, like, it was kind of mixed, because I was like, I like the character dynamics I'm seeing.
Mhm.
I kind of like the story I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But there's something in me that just kind of like is not gelling
Yeah.
with the Harfoots,
Mhm.
and I think a lot of that, especially when I watched it the second time, I was like, oh, it's not anything we're shown in this show that's a problem. It's that I want the Harfoots to be the Hobbits, and they are not.
See, I think it's 100% what we're shown in this show, and it's my next note here. It says it's nobody goes off trail and nobody walks alone, unless you suffer a minor injury or upset the wrong people. In which case, f you, because which we'll see in a couple of episodes.
Yeah.
But again, it's like nobody goes off trail, nobody walks alone. But then they have this whole list of people that they just abandoned because they suffered a minor hardship.
I definitely took that a different way. Is that no one goes off trail. It's like you have to. It's like it's very. I won't say conformance, but it is very much like you stick to the path. You stick to what you know, and there's no individualism.
Yeah.
Versus like people who stand out, they can be left behind. People who get injured, they must be left behind. It's one of those things. It's like it's the hypocrisies of, honestly, I think it's a little bit kind of like hypocrisies of like socialism or communism, any of those kind of like belief systems where it's like no, we stand for everyone, but like the people that like it's one of those moral philosophies where it's kind of like we have to make sure most everyone is okay, but if you're one of the ones that are out, you're just out.
Yeah.
There's no safety nets for you.
I can understand that idea, but there are several times in this where it's like, we are migrating, so don't walk alone. Or later when like Nori goes off to find definitely not Gandalf.
Yeah.
They're like, well, nobody walks alone, so like half of us are going to come with you. So nobody walks alone is very much also interpreted as we stick together. And that's something that again will come up later.
I think that's like the two ways to. It's how we use our words, right? Like in the beginning of the Harfoot's journey, they are using it to control each other, like to essentially weed out individualism, which is actually present in the Hobbits too. But their mantras weed out individualism, and then later on in the journey, as they kind of grow with Nori, and she becomes a new kind of example, they're kind of like, look, we can use our mantras for good.
But I don't think that's how it develops in the show. I
Yeah,
think in the show it very much means we stick together until we don't, and then you get to die.
I definitely took it differently when I watched it. Though.
Yeah. But I mean, again, there will be more examples of exactly that point later.
Yeah.
My next note is back with the elves. Their armor looks like it's made out of cardboard. Like that's just horrible.
This in the crowning ceremony, in the award ceremony specifically.
Yeah, like that armor just doesn't look good. I think it would have been better to have them in some kind of robe or something instead of cheap armor, or just have them in their actual armor instead of this ceremonial stuff. The scene after this, we get more dagger stuff. She's holding her dagger while looking at her brother's grave. So that I do think is a good use of the dagger. Again, it's tying in. This dagger is a big factor for her. It's a key motivator for her because it's a tie-in with her brother's sacrifice and the commitment she made to her brother for that sacrifice. So this, I like the dagger usage. At some point in here, there's a line that says, "Evil does not sleep," which again just makes me think of Boromir. There is an evil there that does not sleep when he's talking about Mordor. So again, more just like again, it feels like you're trying to pull in lines to make it feel like Tolkien, but I don't think it's done in a way that lands for someone like me. Is maybe the fairest way to say that. And then I say Elrond is right, so let's see what Elrond says that I think is right.
Honestly, I mean, a lot of people say Galadriel's the hero of the show. Like, how come the hero is so unlikable?
She is the protagonist. I definitely don't think she's the hero.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is a tragedy. This goes to like Tolkien's love of mythology, like old mythology and like Greek plays. A lot of this is just like you could find any number of Greek plays and just be like, oh, you're the tragic character.
Mm-hmm. But again, when you're 1,000 years old, I think that you should have more character growth than what we are seeing.
I don't know. Does that make for an interesting story? I don't know.
Then tell a different story.
Yeah, I mean, like, how many times do we have to say this? Like, don't do the Silmarillion, guys. No, but Elrond is the hero of season 1, at least. Elrond is the hero.
Except for the fact that he's a rampant, chronic liar. But we'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah.
He is right in this scene, though. Let's see why. So the things I think Elrond is right about, he tells her that finding a sigil in a far-off land does not necessarily prove anything. And then what was the other thing that he said?
How many people will you?
Oh yeah, like how many orcs do you have to kill before you'll be satisfied? What if you're wrong? What if Sauron is not still alive and you spend eternity hunting an enemy that doesn't exist?
So I mean, Elrond is putting Galadriel in check so hard here. I think this is one of those scenes that like I think it's really well written, and it's a checkpoint for the viewer to make sure that you're getting this and the Gil-galad scene. It's like this is a checkpoint for the viewer to be like you need to make sure you're not necessarily siding with Galadriel here, like but to understand what the context is here really, because Elrond is 100% right in almost everything that he says here. The only thing that I do agree with Galadriel is they're both right in their own mentality. Like Galadriel says, why isn't the evil gone from in here? And then, like you pointed out, it's like, well, she's not gonna let it go. Yeah, she can't let it go. Yes. What if you're wrong? What if Sauron is dead? She would spend the rest of her life deteriorating into the evil she hopes to vanquish. But she's so convinced of herself that she's not wrong. She's not wrong. Unfortunately, she's not wrong. But at the same time, there is something that's interesting to ponder here. Like, going back to the Undying Lands would be torture for her, because
for how long though? Like, is she gonna have that forever, or being in the light of the Valar, is she eventually going to get over it the way she has refused to let herself get over it here? Is she going to linger and fester, or is she going to progress?
I think so. This is one of those things that comes back to like you can only go there when your purpose is fulfilled, like and be there at peace. So this is kind of like touching on a little bit of philosophy here again, but it's like we're gonna go outside of this show's canon, go back to the trilogy, and I guess actually the books, because I think in the books Frodo goes to the Undying Lands and he never really gets over, like he still lives with the PTSD essentially of what he went through for a very long time, even in the best conditions. But it's kind of like.
But what did you say before, even in the best conditions?
Like he goes there and.
You said for a very long time.
Yeah, I didn't.
You didn't say forever.
No, I think it's. I can't remember if he dies or not there. That's the thing. And this is like research.
Yeah.
I need to do on it, but I know that he goes there, and he just kind of wallows in it. And I don't know if I can't remember if he dies, but he definitely it never heals. That's the important part, is it never goes away on its own. And like if she went in this condition back to the Undying Lands, she would be numbed, she would be placated, but she would still have it in here. And part of it is just, this is where the Tolkienian philosophy kind of comes in, is like, when your purpose calls you, or when you find a purpose, like, you have to kind of fulfill it. Like, there's going to be a calling in your life. You have to answer that call.
Yeah.
And it's
But
kinda,
how? But in a situation like this, how is she ever going to know if her calling is complete? Like, you can't spend your entire existence hunting one person across the entire
yeah.
world. Like,
That's where the faith comes in.
Yeah.
And the like doing it whether or not you know you're going to be successful, believing that it's the right thing to do.
yeah.
But
But how much evidence do you need? Because they say like they haven't even seen an orc in 500 plus years.
So this is one of those things that's like, we see where she's going. Elrond and Gilgalad are correct in trying to send her to a more peaceful place, because they're afraid that she's going to become the evil that she's hunting. The fact of it is like, she just has to believe that what she's doing is right. That's her calling, that's her purpose. And it's just kind of like in all the rest of the trilogy and in the books, like there's a lot of points where people could have peeled off and not run blindly into like their purpose, but they just carried on and did it, and it led to the correct answer. So like we know that. Go ahead.
But those people also had a very clear idea of what fulfilling that purpose looked like.
Yeah.
Destroying the ring is a purpose. Defending wherever they finding Merry and Pippin after they got kidnapped was fulfilling their purpose. It's like, this is my purpose. I find these hobbits. This is my purpose. I destroy the ring. There's a very clear ending to it.
I think
Here, the clear ending is I have to kill Sauron.
That's
But there's been no evidence of Sauron for centuries.
she just knows that he's out there, because
Does she know or does she hope?
she has faith that he's still out there based off of what she's seeing. So it's true that she if she was a rational thinker in this, she would probably need more evidence. But that's not really where she's at.
And I think that's a big issue a lot of people. And again, like with myself, like even if you're an irrational thinker, I would hope that after 1,000 years, you would start to question whether or not you're right.
I mean, so there's that's an us thing, like that's a real world thing, and a lot of Tolkienian like kind of storytelling. Faith is a little bit more valued. So that's the storytelling that we're in right now, where it's like, yeah, she has to carry on this mission. What we don't know is Elrond and Gilgalad seem like they have the best interest, or they have Galadriel's best interest at heart, and really the kingdoms. They seem the wisest
as a whole.
Seem like they have the wisest course of action for her. But in the end, Galadriel will be right.
Yeah. But just because you're right in the end doesn't mean that you're not also wrong right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, does it? I don't know. I don't know. But she is going to cause a lot of hurt along the way.
Yeah.
We knew that already. She's kind of facilitated the creation of the rings. She's going to do Numenor. She's gonna there's a lot of things that she's going to cause that are bad along the way. ultimately, like in the end, we find out that it's one of those things. It's like everyone has to serve the purpose. It's like it's very much faith based. It's very much like you just have to trust the path that Eru Iluvatar has set before you, and you have to hear those subtle tones. That's kind of what we're in. But this is the world.
All right, my next note is when we're back with the humans again.
I guess fate maybe is a better way to phrase it.
Yeah.
You have to fulfill your fate. That's a better way to phrase it.
All right. So we're with the humans in the Southlands. Arondir the elf goes into a bar and someone calls him Knife Ears, which is an elf slur from the Dragon Age series.
It's in a couple of sections, but yeah. It's
So-
like when I first heard that, I was like, "Are these guys Warhammer fans?"
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. So again, that took me out of it because it's like, oh, I know this is from another property, or I know this from another property.
So question on that part.
Yeah.
It took you out, but I wonder if it wasn't shorthand enough. I wonder how many people were taken out by that
And
reference,
how many were pulled in?
and how many
Yeah.
people were just like, "Oh, I know. I recognize that as like a derogatory term for an elf." So it's letting me know that these
They don't
humans
like
don't
elves,
like
yeah.
these elves.
And again, I fully accept that was the intention.
Yeah. But it pulled you out.
And yeah.
I think that's could they have done it better? Yes.
Yes. Let's see. Oh, and this is where they say like it's been 1,000 years since the war with Morgoth. So that's setting up our timeline of it's been 1,000 years that she's been hunting Sauron effectively. I don't know how long after Morgoth Sauron reigned, but it's been a good long while.
Yeah. Especially in this canon, because
Yeah.
we do know the timeline is all. It's not exactly the way it was laid out in
Yeah.
the history books of the Silmarillion,
Yeah.
because they had to deviate.
Yeah. She gives him seeds, and then she says that in order to use them for their healing properties, they crush them. And then he mocks her. He's like, "You crushed them." I'm like, yeah, that's how you get the essential things out of stuff. And then she says, "Gently." Like, that makes it First of all, how do you crush something gently? Second of all, that's how you extract things from seeds. Like, every chef will tell you if you want the best garlic extraction, you lay the clove out and then you smash it under your chef's knife. Like, crushing things is how you extract what you need from it.
I think his more. I always took that as he was just kind of like shocked at it. Like he's like, "Oh, you're being so rough with these things that are so precious to me. Like you're breaking them. Like it's kind of more like almost like a kind of childish kind of like.
But
Well, you're crushing them.
Let
How can
me-
you crush something that's so precious? And then she goes, she kind of comforts him.
But it feels so. The tone to me sounds like, ugh, you barbaric humans and the way you treat these things. Not like it feels very judgmental. Yeah. So that just doesn't land with me. You crush them.
Yeah.
It's just like you amateur barbarian. How could you?
Sure, I definitely took it. I definitely took it as like a shock to him. I was like, he's like, excuse me, like he had to like catch his breath. You crush these precious things, like
Like, how do you get what you need out of them? Otherwise,
I don't think
Like-
that's his concern. He wants to grow them. He's a grower, not a shower. I
Oh.
mean,
Yeah.
no, as he says, he's a grower. So he's like, why would you crush seeds? Like you should grow them.
well, she says they crush the petals, not the seeds.
or the
Yeah.
the petals, yeah, whatever
Um,
it is. But she's like, why would you crush, these things that I value?
Yeah.
They're meant to be enjoyed gently,
Speaking of him being a grower, because I have a note on that later, but while we're here, that's another one of those like fantasy world building things that I hate, is when it's like, just say farmer.
Yeah.
Because again, it's like I know that you're trying to be like, hey, this is a unique world,
Mhm.
but what it does is it's jarring and it takes me out of it. If you say farmer, I just ride along with you and it's okay. You say grower, and then I'm like, oh, that's not the right word, and it feels like you're just trying too hard to make this feel different. Same thing in, I think it's episode 2, when they call an earthquake a ground shake.
Yeah.
Like, just say earthquake. You're trying too hard, and it takes me out of it.
I think the
If it's something unique to the world you're building, come up with whatever word you want. If it's something that we share in common, just use the same word.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's one of those tricky things where like this was written where Middle Earth was synonymous with ground, like so we do kind of call the planet Earth, but like fantasy has come so far from then that like the planet has a different name. Earth
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
kind of a term for dirt, but like yeah, it's a funky position that a lot of like calling Earth is not really canon, I guess.
Yeah.
But
But it would still be an earthquake, because we call ground Earth also.
yeah, but
So,
I mean,
like, it still shakes the ground. Like, we know that when there's an earthquake, it doesn't shake the entire planet. It shakes
Right,
the
right,
Earth under
right.
us right here and now.
Sure.
So, like, you can use the
I
same
think,
word.
yeah, I think it's one of those weird things. Is like I've noticed this across many franchises, the moving away from the term Earth to refer to the ground, because Earth makes us think of our Earth, whereas
Only if it's capitalized.
well, most franchises now, the expectation for fantasy franchises is to reference the planet you are on, which is
Yeah.
definitely not Earth.
Yeah.
So
I think that in, like, sci-fi, that makes sense. If it's, like, futuristic, Earth is or was a real place, then that makes sense. I think that if it's in a universe where there never was a Earth,
you
then,
can still call it
then you
Earth.
can still, yeah.
Just like Earth is dirt.
Yeah,
dirt
Earth is dirt, yeah.
I think honestly, I think that's fair, but I think that's 100% what was happening there. Is they're trying to distance themselves from the term Earth,
Yeah.
but then we get vocabulary that
Yeah.
pulls some people out.
Yeah. Because that's something that I do in my own writing. A lot of times I'm like, oh, I'm going to use this weird word. And then I go, no, I'm just using a weird word for the sake of using a weird word. I should not do that. That's going to just make it harder. Oh, and then we had the whole, and this we kind of touched on earlier, the whole conversation about, she asks him if the elves have healers, and he says we have artificers. So first of all, no, we don't have healers. He says that most of our wounds heal on their own, so people make great works of art. Artificer and artist are not the same thing.
Sure.
And again, that's one of those, it feels like one of the writers heard the term but didn't learn the term and used it incorrectly, which people that play D&D and know what an artificer is.
or just like
Or
was
play.
looking up.
Yeah.
There was like, what are some cool fantasy terminologies
Yeah.
that you use?
And they just saw art and assumed that the rest of it meant pertaining to art as opposed to...
I wouldn't be surprised if they did look up the dictionary term for it, and it was just close enough that they're like, okay, I can use this my own way, but not realizing that the fantasy community has a lot of clear
expectation for that term.
Yeah, there's clear
Yeah.
images in their head for what an artificer is,
Yeah.
and it's not what you're describing.
Yeah.
So that is unfortunate. I do feel like this whole sequence around the well, specifically, actually this whole sequence, this introduction to the Southlands, has some of probably the most jarring, out of place writing.
Yeah.
I can't even go as far as to say it's bad, because I I do like some of the things that they're trying to do here, and if I try to measure what their intent was, but I think it just doesn't hit the way we're expecting it. Because later on, when he meets back up with his buddy, I have kind of a similar thought about their buddy comedy relationship, which is natural and correct, and this is the right place for it to happen.
Yeah.
But there's something about it that just is it removes you from the setting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she says, "Do you have healers?" He says, "We have artificers that make art."
Yeah.
That's- All right.
Because like I think that's one of those is like elf medicine.
Yeah.
As most people who are familiar with Tolkien, elf medicine also heals the soul. That's what they're kind of trying to allude to here, but they actually
separate it instead of joining it.
Yeah, they actually exclude elves' capability. They say, "Oh yeah, elves don't do
Physical healing,
yeah."
which we'll
Which
come
is
back to.
problematic,
Which
which
we'll
is
come
problematic.
back to.
You shouldn't have wrote those lines. That
Yep.
was a bad one.
Yep. Then Arendir has the conversation with his commander. I do like this point here where Arendir's like, we shouldn't be judging these people for what their ancestors did. Like, these are different people. We need to give them a fair shake. I do like this. The Watch Warden, like Galadriel, can't let crap go.
So that's one of those things. It's like here's where like modern sensibilities and what the show actually has in it clash.
Yeah.
Because like modern sensibility is like, yeah, don't be judgy. Like give everyone their fair shake.
Yeah.
But in this show, Galadriel's right. In the show,
Mhm.
the Watch Warden is right about these people. They are
About some of these people.
most of them are secret Sauron worshippers, or like just at the very least, kind of jaded bad people. But to be fair, that's real of all wartime places. Like,
Yeah.
people who have
Yeah.
lived through oppression and been like overly policed.
Yeah. Yeah.
They kind of hate authority.
Yeah.
And they're willing to turn to nefarious people who promise them ways out. Like that's a real human thing.
Yeah.
So like it's a
I think this show teaches a lot of lessons that it doesn't intend to teach. And I think one of those lessons is this: if you dwell on something too long, you can cause that thing to be. I think they're trying to teach that a little bit intentionally, but I don't think they do it the way that they think they're doing it. And I think that this is an example of that, where it's by over policing these people, we are causing them to be the thing that we are worried about them being. I don't know where I was going with
I mean
that,
that's the looking up or looking down thing. It's like we are so afraid of. This is like a point I actually meant to make earlier about the pathway to corruption is always, kind of the Star Wars Jedi thing where it's like loss leads to fear, fear leads to anger.
Yeah.
Like that is true in real life, and it's true in the Tolkienian kind of canon too, where it's like, yeah, these elves, they lost a lot at the hands of these people. They came here, they tried to be the better people, but there's just a lot of baggage between these people. And they gave in to the fear of never giving these people. It looks like they tried to give them kind of like, okay, you do you, and we'll just police you.
Yeah.
But it was still it wasn't done in good faith, and that's the point. Is like, if you want to sow good seeds, you have to be optimistic. You have to be positive. You can't. The evil's going to stay in here, and it's going to grow. It's going to sow itself. So that's but the elves did. They were afraid of these people. That's how it came across when they were policing them.
Mm-hmm.
It was picked up by the people because people know how you feel about it, whether or not you mean to say it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that's what grows in these lands is resentment,
Yeah.
turning back to, other places.
Yeah. My next note is about him saying he's a grower instead of a farmer. We already talked about that.
Yeah.
And then my next note is going to be
Well, I was gonna do
after
the-
a commercial break.
I was gonna do the buddy cop. So I think the bridge / end of the Southlands, on the way to the tower, is one that turned off a lot of people. This was the scene specifically in my mind when I mentioned earlier that I didn't want to MCUify my elves. Like I didn't want
Yeah.
I didn't want quippiness.
Yeah.
But that was me reacting to other outside media. When I look at this scene by itself, I think it's good that they're trying to humanize these characters and making them relatable. This is a real relationship that soldiers and buddy cops have. And it's a real relationship. It's written the way this might have actually come. Even though the you smell of rotten leaves feels childish. Like anyone
Yeah.
who's been around military boys is kind of
That's
just
the humor style.
yeah. It's just a rib, and it's just kind of they've been through so much stuff together that they're okay with getting under each other's skin a little bit.
Yeah.
But every time they attempt to do that, especially with the elves, it comes off poorly.
Yeah.
And the other thing that we have here is traveling a long distance. This works in sitcoms where we start a conversation in one scene, we travel to a new scene,
Yeah.
and we end. That's a writing technique that works in sitcoms because we might be moving from the office building to the car,
Yeah.
or we're moving from
Yeah.
the front yard to the backyard or
Yeah.
something like that. It works in a lot of different media that we're used to writing for
Yeah.
because we're traveling shorter distances.
Mm-hmm.
It'll come up later with
Elrond and Celebrimbor
Yeah,
and
exact-
Casa Doom.
exactly, and I think it comes
Because
up
I have a note about that in Casa Doom too. But
Yeah.
we'll jump off that bridge when we come to it.
But it's one of those things. It works. I believe rationally. I believe that these characters could have been talking about it the whole way because they're buddies. They got nothing else to talk about.
Yeah.
I respect it intellectually as a writing technique, but it is again just kind of it rubs people the wrong way. It's a little bit tone deaf. So
Yeah.
I watch it. I don't have anything clinically wrong with it, but I think it just is off-putting to some people.
And it could even be, you can even solve that by having that portion of the conversation happen immediately after the rotten leaves comment, and just, the camera zooms way out, and we see them walking across the landscape, and we hear this bit of conversation as it kind of fades out at the beginning of their journey, and then it cuts to them arriving at the tower, and an entirely new conversation starts, or they start talking to the commander, as opposed to ending a long walk having the same conversation. Is a way I think they could have solved exactly that. My next note is when Arondir is milking the cow. So you could have just milked that poison onto the ground. Bronwyn's not going to want to hold your hand now.
Yes, it's
Like, squirts it right into his hand. It's like, dude, you can squirt it on the ground and people still see that it's black sludge. Like, you don't have to put that on your hand.
so. This is not. This is another example, I think, of not practical but effective visuals. So
Yeah.
again, I know the dagger, picking up the boat with the dagger, it took you out of it, but I think it was a lot of effective shorthand. This is trying to get a reaction out. It's just trying to make you feel disgusted.
Yeah.
That's what this whole scene is trying to do. Is like, this cow is really, there's something really wrong with this.
Yeah.
So the whole purpose of this shot, of the milking the cow shot, is to make you feel gross.
Yeah.
And so
it does.
Yeah. If you
Yeah.
if you put it onto the ground and the camera was just watching him put it onto the ground, we'd be like, oh, that's interesting. That milk's black. But if he puts it on his hand, we go, ugh! So it's effective at what it's supposed to be doing, but it doesn't make any rational, practical sense.
I have hand milked cows, and I have never once squirted it onto my hand to make sure the milk was okay. You squirt it into a bucket or something. Yeah. Let's see. What's my next? Hilt under the floorboards. Oh, so this is a minor-ish note, but it's just they find this sword hilt under the floorboards in the barn, and then the guy almost catches them, and he tells him like, "Oh, you like run away fast," but then he just sits here staring at the sword hilt forever. It's like if you're about to get caught and it's that big of a deal. I mean,
But yeah, I'm curious about this because I definitely
Watch it.
so the door creaks as they're about to get caught. Go on, quick. But he doesn't go anywhere. He just sits there and stares at this thing. It's like, if you're really that concerned about getting caught, so again, I get that they want to show, oh, this is a powerful artifact and he's looking at it by himself and stuff. Then just have him find it by himself. Don't have someone else there. Don't have them almost get caught. Don't have the other person have to run away fast so they don't get caught. And then him just sit there for an eternity while they're about to get caught.
Yeah, because I think they even describe it leading up to this shot.
Mhm.
He's like talking to his friend about how he found it. So we kind of assume that brown-haired boy is supposed to be here,
Yeah.
and he wants to show this thing that he found to his friend. That they're, so like it sets up that what could have been that shot of him just finding it by himself and getting obsessed with it. That could have just been the shot of him just finding it for the first time. But I guess it happened. The reason why I rationalize it this way is it feels a little bit more human in the fact that like I've been a mischievous boy. Like I know what kids are like, and like this feels like a real moment to me. But also like I think it puts it back in time. It's like, how long has this been here? It kind of puts this question mark in our head of like, how long has this stuff kind of been like weaving in and out of their lives?
Yeah.
Kind of snaking through them, because it's a big through line that kid is really like he's succumbing to the dark whispers, the influence of darkness in this land. So it's not just that moment. Like it's been working on him for a while.
Yeah.
So it gives us time, and it feels like a more human when he's there with his friend. But then it brings up the problems he has. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. What
Again,
you're
I think
thinking.
you just need to do it a different way.
Also, tinfoil hat time.
Oh dear.
They never show. What's that boy's name again? I'm forgetting his name.
Theo.
Theo. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
They never showed Theo's ears.
I'm pretty sure they do.
I'm pretty sure they don't, because I was looking for. I've been looking for it,
Yeah.
and I feel like he might be the love child.
Of Arondir and Bronwyn,
Yeah.
or of Sauron and Bronwyn.
Of Arondir and Bronwyn, because they even talk about how like his father's been absent.
Yeah.
I don't know if that ever. It might have been addressed at some point. There
Yeah.
might be an answer to that, but I remember looking for it because I was very. It always struck me as really weird. It's like he's the only one who has his ears covered the whole time, and his mom is fresh with this elf dude.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just color of the hair and everything. I was like, I could see him. I could see him being a combination of the two. If they want to do that casting for later.
Yeah. Let's just do a quick Google Theo Rings of Power and just see if there's any points where we can see his ears. Any points where we can see his ears.
There it is. They're a little pointy though.
There, you think? I think he just got uniquely shaped ears.
Dang.
So yeah, in a later episode, you see his ears. They're not pointy.
Well, that goes that tinfoil hat theory. Oh well.
All right. Elves 2. Elrond is like staring off a cliff and says, "She has passed beyond my sight." Again, Gandalf says, "Frodo has passed beyond my sight." It's another, like, they're just pulling lines, I feel like, to pull lines. And then I have, is Gil-galad Sauron? Is Celebrimbor Sauron? They just, like, play kind of ominous music over. I will say, I think the music in this is very well done.
Yes.
The music is phenomenal. But they just play, like, this kind of ominous music over Gil-galad in a couple of these scenes, and over when he, like, first meets Celebrimbor. And Celebrimbor, like, also makes sort of I know more than you know face, which later we find out that he does. I don't know that I want to give the show enough credit to say they did that on purpose.
I definitely do. I definitely do.
But yeah, just like the music they play over, it's one of those, like, anytime there's ever semi-ominous music or someone makes a little bit of an off face, I'm like, are they Sauron? Just which I think is something they're trying to do very hard. I don't think they do very successfully.
Yeah, that goes back to my, like, red herring and mystery boxing that works for your first time watching it, or I don't know, if you're trying to get interest involved.
Yeah.
But, like, ultimately, I think it was distracting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
My next note about the Harfoots, I just say Nori creeping is funny when she just, like, pops up and startles Sadok. I did think that was fun.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I like a lot of the Harfoot stuff. Like, they gave them a lot of character.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily the hobbits. Once you can detangle those two.
Yeah.
But
Next scene with the humans, I have no notes. Valinor boat. Alright. So I have, in spite of how cheap it looks, the armor assembly is fairly well done and kind of accurate. And now again, we have attention brought to the dagger. Galadriel is returning to Valinor, and she's not allowed to take the dagger to Valinor. But the dagger is originally from Valinor, as we established, based on her brother having it in the first sequence in Valinor.
I don't know if she's not allowed to take it. It's more like they're taking off their armor and their swords and stuff, right?
No, but like she...
They take it from her. You're right.
But they take it with some force. I mean,
yeah, like she doesn't want to let it go.
Yeah.
It just goes back.
So like...
All of this stays on the boat. This is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's just that they're taking off the armor. This is a ceremony.
Yeah, I'm totally on board for all that. They try to take it, and she holds on to it. And then they, like, have a little bit of a tug of war, and he's like, dude, let go of the dagger. Why aren't you letting go of the dagger? She's like, it's from Valinor. I'm taking it back to Valinor where it belongs. And finally she lets it go.
That's totally not how it hit me at all.
No, I don't think she's trying to take it to Valinor where it belongs. I think she just doesn't want to let go. And I can appreciate that they're trying to set up this, do I let go of my brother and go to Valinor, or do I cling to my brother and stay here? But she's already said that she won't let go of her brother if she goes to Valinor. And this elf that's de-armoring her and de-arming her doesn't know what the dagger represents. So why is that elf so adamant that she can't take the dagger back to Valinor?
I don't think that that's the case. I think everything on the boat goes to Valinor because there's no boat left afterwards.
Yeah.
So all the armor, the dagger goes to Valinor. Everything on this boat that we see is still going to Valinor. So the dagger is still going to go to Valinor. It's more of like a symbolic thing. This is one of those poetry things, like she can't let it go, like literally and figuratively can't let it go.
But
And it's just the setup that you were exactly outlining. They just want to re-articulate where the character is and what her internal conflict is at this point.
Yeah.
It
But if
also
all of this is going to Valinor, then why isn't she allowed to hold on to it? Why is that other elf like pulling so hard to get it back? Also, I'm gonna hard one. What probably should be a minor detail a little bit, but I just want to verify something real quick. So she's holding the hilt of the dagger.
Yeah.
The other girl holds the sheath of the dagger, but it doesn't unsheath. Anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think this is just she's in there mentally already where she doesn't want to let go of the dagger. This is just externalizing. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is just
Yeah.
an externalization of what's going on internally with her.
Yeah. I'm fully aware of why they do it.
Yeah.
I just, again, it's one of those, I think that based on everything we've seen leading up to this, there was another way that it should have been done. Especially if the dagger's going to Valinor anyway. Why can't she just hold it while they sail through the clouds?
Well, she does need to have it on the ground because she has to look down. That's
Yeah,
that's-
again, they're trying to set up stuff that they take a series of steps that don't make sense in order to set up a moment, and that's something that happens a lot in
But
the
all
series.
these moments work well together. I guess my thing is like if you follow what they're telling you, it's coherent. It all makes sense. Like it from a symbolic standpoint. Like maybe if she was not feeling any emotions in this moment and she was just thinking rationally, yeah, she would be like, oh, it's not going anywhere. Which is probably the conclusion that she comes to, but she's in an emotional state right now. She's holding on to this thing for comfort. She's trying to like work through this, and it seems like she does work through it when she comes to the rationalization that like, oh, this is going to be on the boat with me. Like I can let this go. Like it will. I'm okay, right? But like, it also needs to be there for us to see the poetry of this sequence where it's like it calls back to the boat that floats, the rock that sinks. You look up or you look down because everyone else is looking up at the light, and she has to look down to follow her gut.
But again, I think there's a better way to do it, because
That works. That's so beautiful. That's so poetic.
But if I'm taking stuff off of someone for a ceremony,
Yeah.
and one of the things I try to take, they like fight and pull back on. If they're going to have it anyway, and there's no long-term reason that I have to remove from them, I'm just going to let them keep it. So why does the other elf try so hard to get it away from her?
It's a pretty brief moment. I don't think it's like
Oh, I think it's super drug out.
it's counted.
Alright, so grabs dagger, holds onto it, pulls back and forth. Her friend looks at her. Finally lets go. So that's almost 14 seconds
We get
of
all,
tug of
we get
war.
all the reaction. Again, we are watching a movie. We have to see all those cuts and all the different characters. But also, that's not a long time for anything to happen in real life.
14 seconds is a long time for anything to happen in real life.
Not really. I think if there was a misunderstanding or miscommunication, like 14 seconds is not long.
But again, if I pull on something once and someone pulls back,
Also,
and I don't have to take it,
also
I'm
you're
not gonna
watching
take
a movie,
it.
Lance.
I'm not gonna take it. I'm just
Also-
gonna let it go.
Also, you're watching a movie,
But
where
it
they're
should
trying to
still
tell you a
make
story.
sense.
It
It
does
just-
make a lot of sense. I don't know
I
why
don't
you're
think
so
that
hung
makes
up on
any
this, dude.
sense.
I don't know why
I
you're so
don't
hung up on
think.
this.
I don't think having to take the dagger from her makes sense.
Because it's a they're doing a ceremony where
Mm-hmm.
they're letting go of being soldiers. That includes taking her weapon off and going back to like peaceful lands. So she has to give up the dagger as kind of a symbol of this ceremony. That she's going back to the peaceful
And then
lands.
she's gonna get the dagger back anyway.
Well, yeah, they're not taking anything from these people, but it's like that's still going to be their armor. They're going to hang it up in their house when they get home. But like this is like you're getting dressed down as a symbol of you like giving up battle and going to a peaceful life. Like
I
That's
think.
not-
Let me do it this
we
way.
do
I
we
think,
do a lot of ceremonies like this in
Yeah.
real life.
Yeah, but people don't fight during ceremonies.
Yeah, but she's
I
going
think-
through an emotional.
I think the
standpoint
better.
with
I
this.
think the better way to do it. I think the better way to do it would have been, as they get on the boat, they forfeit their arms. They forfeit their armor. They even if it's going on the boat with them, it's like I get on the boat as we sail out from the harbor. I surrender my equipment and I put it on like a display rack on the side of the boat, and then we still get a moment of her like, am I giving this up? Taking that breath, surrendering the dagger, and then it's still on the boat so that when she gets there, she can look back at the dagger. But we don't have this weird, why am I fighting over something that's going to Valinor anyway?
Because we're talking about like you're talking about like does this make sense from like filling my rucksack? Like this is a ceremony and it's a piece of art. Like we're looking at a video. This makes for a better moment. It makes for a more emotionally cohesive moment if you will just let go of the fact that they played tug of war for a little bit too long. Like this whole emotional beat though is beautiful because we have like we see what's at stake. We know where she's at. We're there with her when she's feeling all of these emotions. We're feeling the conflict, and we see what's at stake. It's got to be this close together so that we really feel the tension. Like this is good cinema because it's letting you feel the weight of this moment.
I agree.
It took you
I agree
out of
with
it.
what they're trying to do.
Okay.
I think that they could have done it better.
I don't.
I just think.
I don't
I
like.
think.
I don't like your idea, man.
I think the fact that they hold on to. I think the fact that they focus so hard on. I think the fact that they focus so hard on taking something that is going with her anyway doesn't make sense. I get that it's a ceremony. I don't think that it makes sense.
I'm sorry it didn't make sense to you, but it's. I
No,
think it's.
It
brilliant.
makes what they are trying to convey makes sense.
And it makes
I
sense.
think the way they are conveying it does not.
I think it makes sense from. I feel like it's a natural moment. I feel like it's a poetic moment. I feel like all the pieces are there. This is one of those scenes that just like. It totally works for me. I think this is extremely well crafted. I think trying to make it better because of being hung up over something small like that is like you might have wanted to see it differently because that moment took you out of it for some reason, but I mean this is really really good. This whole sequence is really good, man. I don't know. I just disagree. Yes.
You're welcome to disagree. I think that this sequence is very obvious and not fully thought through.
Why?
Because the dagger is from Valinor. So just let her take it to Valinor.
She is going
If
to
that's
take it to Valinor.
If that's the thing that she wants to hold on to, let her hold on to it.
it's just part of the ceremony. Like you're so fixated on this, but it's like it's just part of the ceremony. They're taking all the armor off. Okay, everyone's putting it all down. We're gonna go into the land of peace. This is part of our ceremony. Okay, ma'am, can I have your dagger, please? Like, I see. Like, she's having a moment of conflict. This is Galadriel driven from her emotional state.
Yeah.
The person trying to take the dagger is just trying to do her job. So she's just like, ma'am, I need to take your dagger. That's my job. That's part of the ceremony. And Galadriel's the one who's like, she's not able to let it go because of an emotional state that she's in.
No, I fully accept that.
Yeah.
I totally understand that.
Yep.
I just don't think that based on other factors around this that it maintains internal logical consistency. I think
what
that
is your problem with it?
if the dagger is from Valinor,
Yeah.
and the dagger is gonna end up in Valinor, and she's gonna get it back anyway, I don't think that the ceremony person is gonna fight that hard to take
She
it.
doesn't fight that hard. She grabs it and then she's kind of like,
It goes back and forth like 3 times.
It's not like a struggle. This is.
I think
not-
we're
I think
watching.
you're
I
playing-
think we're watching a different.
I think
we're
you're-
watching a different scene.
playing up how much of a conflict this is. She grabs it with a hand.
So forward.
A hand.
So that's one forward, backward, forward, backward, forward, backward.
That's just a little like that. That's not even like straining.
that I think it's.
Do you see how loose that was? She's not even pulling on it. She's got it a little loose. She's got a little loose, and then goes, okay, I let it go. Like, I think you're playing up how much tension there was there.
I think there's so much tension there.
I mean, there's
Anyway,
emotional tension, but
all
there's
right.
no. That's not like a physical struggle. That's,
All right, let's move on. I don't think that is how it should have been handled. I agree that it's very poetic, and I agree that it sets up the emotional struggle, and I agree that it symbolizes her unwillingness to let go, and I like that she looks back and forth between the dagger and the light. I like all of that. I think the fact that the dagger took so much effort for something that she was gonna get back anyway and was from Valinor in the first place should have been different.
I mean, it's just like anytime you're trying to give up something that's like a comfort. Like if you have any kind of trauma or any kind of like, I would say like obsession or anything, like when a stewardess comes over to you at the airport and says, "Ma'am, I need to take your bag," and you go like you have something that makes it really hard for you to let go of this bag. She's like, I'm just gonna take your bag. This is part of our safety protocol. I'm just gonna do this. Like, they would do exactly what we see here, and until the lady kind of goes like, "Oh yeah, I'm being irrational. Yeah, just please take my bag. I know it's there. I know it's safe. I'm okay. You're okay. Everybody's okay." Like, that's exactly how it would play out.
Okay. I disagree. I think it's ridiculous, but that's a point
Agree to
we're never gonna come to a middle on.
And we shouldn't, because I'm right.
False. I even say here, like, I like the setup of choosing between Valinor and her quest, but, and then we get to, which comes first? I may have put, oh, no, that comes first. No. Oh, it, like, kind of happens at the same time. Is Rocket Man Sauron? After the crash. And then here at the end of this episode, we get Galadriel's first suicide attempt of the season. It is a 7,000-mile swim from Valinor to Middle-earth, with monsters and storms, and that'll be a point that I make later, is do elves get tired? Because that's something that seems to kind of go back and forth a lot in this story. Yeah.
If only there was a precedent set early on in this episode for Galadriel pushing herself to do things that are physically crazy for her mission. If
Yeah.
only we had, like, I don't know, the second shot of this entire show
Yeah.
to show that she will push herself to do crazy, batshit things. If only that was established.
Yeah. No, that is fully established, and I totally accept that.
Yeah.
I just think, like, they've sailed from Valinor to Middle Earth before. They're probably gonna do it again because they have to, like, go pick up the next batch of people that's coming to Valinor. Or is it boats only go one way, and this ceremony girl taking her dagger is also honored and going to Valinor?
Yeah. No, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's actually canonically correct.
Boats only go one way.
Yeah. And
Even though they've sailed from Valinor before.
yeah, but I mean, the whole thing is like they don't go back and forth regularly. This is super
Yeah.
special. They kind of mention it in the episode,
Yeah.
but we have to like separate the canon too a little bit because we don't know exactly how much of the canon they're keeping from the books and stuff. But I think within this episode, we're just trying to talk within this episode, they do establish that this is
Yeah, that this is
a
a
rare
huge honor.
trip.
Yeah.
This is a super rare trip. This
Yeah.
doesn't happen. Like this
So-
boat ain't coming back, baby.
Yeah. So again, the elves that like take their armor off,
Yeah, they go in there too. You're correct.
what did they do to get such an honor to get to return to Valinor?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So Galadriel's first suicide attempt of the season is how we end episode 1.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts.
I was so on board with this episode. I liked it. Like I said, the first time I watched it, I think the moments that were hang-ups for me. So here's the thing: is everyone has their moments in this whole season, but in this episode, you had like the dagger was a big disconnect moment for you, where you're just like, "That's not right." For me, I had a moment when I first watched it with the elves and the buddy comedy. I was just like, I was immediately taken out of the context of the show. I think there's so much expectation and so much ground that this property and this show has to cover. It's a lot of work. It's really hard. I think what they're going to need to do for season 2 is they're going to really have to work on getting people immersed in it and having their suspense of disbelief continue down through an entire episode. Part of the other problem I think is happening is you have a huge cast in this. So there's so many cuts. We're picking up scenes. There's so many opportunities to fall off of the bus that, like, yeah, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much for you to be unimmersed. This is such a robust, fleshed out, poetic, visually stunning place that, like, you really, it's so unbelievable. There's a huge mountain of suspension of disbelief that you have to get through. And it's so easy to hop off of that train. And different people, it's going to hit different times. And they definitely do. And I think that's honestly been like the bane of a lot of this is like.
As someone who has participated in and watched a lot of musical theater, I think my level for suspension of disbelief is pretty high. Like if I can accept a world where people randomly just burst out into song.
But that's different because you know what you're buying into, and I think
I think that when you get into a fantasy world, you also know what you're buying into.
Yeah, and like for me, there's not a lot of bumps in the road for me like this, but part of it is because I know exactly what they're trying to do with this, and I'm on board with it immediately. That's another part of it. Is like from the opening sequence, I was on board with it. The hurdles for me, and I think the hurdles for a lot of people were, we didn't trust that a big company could be trusted with this IP. And so we were so ready for this to be bastardized. We were so ready for this to be commercialized. We were
Yeah.
so ready for them to be gimmicks. And to be fair, we get a lot of that in our media that we consume. We're hypersensitive to it. And so, like, anytime there's, just like as you called out, with, the callbacks between lines of dialogue being very similar,
Yeah.
if not, like,
Identical.
almost identical. Yeah, like, it's to you that says off a bell and alarm. It's like, Amazon. This is
Yeah.
Amazon taking a dump on my IP. It's so easy to be triggered that way. And go ahead.
Couple of points. One, because like I said before this, I had the exact opposite experience. I went into this hopeful and optimistic, and I feel like they did exactly what you just said, is they gimmickized and commercialized it in bad ways. And then what was the last point that you just made about talking about a lot of it for me personally is I'm someone that retains. So, like, growing up, I could listen to a song one time and have it memorized. Like, I watch movies and, like, I absorb them. It's not just, oh yeah, I enjoy them. And so for me, when I hear a line that is directly pulled from somewhere else, for me it's, oh, now I'm thinking about that. I'm no longer here with you.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, I get that that's primarily just a me thing because of the way I retain things and the way that I connect things.
But maybe it's a bad
But-
policy, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing it because like in a lot of my personal writing, I do reference a lot of other things, but I do it very on purpose of, hey, I'm referencing this because it's going to clarify something in my writing or whatever. It's not just,
Kind of like the knife ears comment.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah,
It's kind of like, I think they're using it, but when it's at this caliber,
yeah,
it's unacceptable. It was
Yeah.
like, you spent billions of dollars on it, and you're going to use knife ears to get me to understand what you're trying to say, so, and that's what you react to.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think even just saying elf in a disgusted way works. Like, let it go, elf.
Yeah.
Because he says, like, let it go, knife ears.
Yeah.
It's like, if you just say, let it go, elf, then it's like, we still get the same idea, but it also doesn't pull from a different property to
I think
make
that's
that.
a fair. I think that's a fair solve there. I hope that in the season 2 they don't do that. So maybe because
Yeah.
maybe I do hope that in season 2 there's a lot of lessons to have learned. I hope they don't learn the wrong lessons though, because it's also very easy to just take some of the backlash and just start running a thing. Because honestly, what could happen, I think the showrunners of this absolutely get Tolkien. I do agree that I think sometimes the directors could do a little bit better in some of the sequences.
I think it would be fair to say the showrunners get Tolkien, they don't know how to explain Tolkien, and the writers don't get Tolkien and haven't been explained Tolkien.
I guess I don't know about that, but I feel like a lot of what is here, writing wise, gets Tolkien. But I think like some of the colloquialisms, I feel like there's probably a lot of back and forth. You can imagine with a project this big, there's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah.
Between executives who think they have great ideas, writers who think they have great ideas, but they're kind of off-brand. There's probably a lot of internal politics that go into making a show of this caliber. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the colloquialisms are something that are gonna get reviewed for the second season, or hopefully not doubled down on, because I do think there's a lot
epicenter for a project of this magnitude, especially when things go wrong, when they don't get the results that they wanted. Unless there's an abundance of faith in the creative team, then executives start to come in. So, season 2 is going to be really telling about who wears the pants.
Yeah.
Because I feel like when I watched this, they took so many risks. Like, they poured so much money into this production, and like, I can't believe it's kind of like, honestly, it's kind of like Tolkien himself. Like, he just wrote his style. He's like, this is how I want to write my stories. You publish them or not. And all of his publishers are like, you can't do it that way.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how a story's written. And he's like, well, this is what I'm writing. You can publish it or not.
Yeah.
And I feel like that caliber of risk is taken in this first season, where it's just like, they do things that are not popular, and they do things that, like, but I think are correct. They definitely scratch the itch for me, 100%. Like, I walk into it, I go, oh, thank God, you get it. I'm so happy. I'm so happy with everything I'm seeing here. And well, not everything. That is hyperbole, but you know,
Enough of it.
yeah. That, like, I think they're taking a huge risk and making this show ought not to have that big of a budget, because it only appeals to like 200 people in the whole world.
I hope that season 2 opens with Galadriel's eyes snapping open, and she says, I don't know if elves sleep or not, but like, I just had the craziest vision, dream, whatever. A lot of it didn't make sense, but ultimately, Sauron is going to be in the Southlands, and we need to do something about it, and then just start fresh.
It was all just a
It's
dream.
all just
No, but for episode 1, do you have any other thoughts?
not at the moment. I'm sure stuff will come up later, but yeah.
I think episode 2 is going to be an interesting review, because there's a lot more of, like, season based. This is like, did they get the flavor right? I feel like episode 2, we start setting up dominoes for the season.
Yeah.
They're interesting to talk about.
I think episode 2, maybe it's episode 3. One of those is where I have like the fewest notes. It's probably episode 3. It's like 1, I have what I had, and then 2, I think I have a little bit more, and then 3, it's like, oh, this actually, and then 4 onward is just like, and this, and this, and that.
Yeah. Because, and I think we should add a disclaimer here. It's like, when this first came out, we had a lively debate about it.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of our return to it, because we wanted to go over everything that we were doing in podcast form or in whatever form. We wanted to have this discussion.
Yeah.
Not on text.
Discord or over
Yeah.
text.
Yeah.
Yeah, our D&D Discord was like, you guys need to do this privately, not
Take it outside.
publicly."
Take it outside. Oh God, the new episode dropped, didn't it?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that was episode 1. It was only 1,000,000 hours long. Hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully, our future ones will be a little more concise, because we won't go into quite as much philosophy. It'll be more about the show specifically, but who knows? Thanks for watching. If you did, if not, you're not here to see this anyway.